This is the newly upgraded Selkirk LUXX Control Air. This paddle builds on the reputation of the original LUXX by introducing several key upgrades, including Selkirk's new Infinigrit surface technology, structural foam enhancements, and some subtle design tweaks. Whether you're a control player looking for a bit more offensive options or just curious about how the LUXX 2 stacks up against the competition, I've got you covered. We'll take a look at the specs, on-court performance, lab testing, and of course, how it feels in real match play. Let's get into it. First, a disclosure. Selkirk sent me these paddles to test for a potential review with no obligations, no money changed hands, and Selkirk did not have any input on this video's production or get to preview it before it was published. But if you use my affiliate link to purchase one of these, there's no increased cost for you. You get a Selkirk gift card, and I get a commission, which helps this channel and allows me to keep making videos like this. So the new LUXX will be offered first to Labs members today, May 19th, and will be available to everyone else starting on Thursday, May 22nd. The price is $280, which is a $30 increase over the price of the original LUXX, which Selkirk says is mostly the result of increased costs related to their Infinigrit texture. More about that later. The LUXX 2 comes in two shapes, so the Invicta and the Epic, and at launch there will be 3 available colorways: red, blue, and purple. The Invicta is their elongated shape, measuring 16.5 by 7.5 inches with a 5.35-inch handle, and the Epic measures 16 by 8 inches with a slightly shorter handle at 5.25 inches. Similar to the first LUXX, the LUXX 2 is a fully molded edgeless paddle constructed using mostly carbon fiber for the frame and face layup and polypropylene honeycomb for the core. Besides the aesthetic adjustments, there are 3 main changes they've made to the paddle that affect performance. First, they've added foam in the throat of the paddle surrounding the neck hole. In this x-ray, you can see the foam encircles the hole and fills the area between the polypropylene honeycomb up top and the handle down below. So if you think of the hole like a mouth, then the foam is kind of like a beard. The second change they made was to drop the thickness from 20 millimeters down to 19 millimeters. This isn't much of a change, and it was done mostly to get the overall weight of the paddle down because the extra foam does add weight. All of my paddles weigh 8.0 ounces on the nose, just the same as the original LUXX. And the last change is that the new LUXX is coated with Selkirk's new Infinigrit to provide texture needed to spin the ball. One of the biggest complaints with spray-on grit so far has been poor durability. Compared to raw carbon fiber, paint grit or spray-on grit textures have historically proven to be far less durable, losing their texture quickly and resulting in a quick drop-off in your capacity to create spin. Selkirk claims that their Infinigrit lasts 3 times longer than raw carbon fiber. Now, this is a big claim, but there is some actual testing behind it. When I visited the Selkirk headquarters 2 weeks ago, they showed us the test performed to compare the durability of Infinigrit to raw carbon fiber. They use what's called a Tabor abrasion test, which is an ASTM-approved method to test resistance to surface abrasion. So after the Tabor kind of abrades the paddle surface, it's then put under a profilometer, which renders a 3D image of the surface to see kind of what damage has resulted. Using this method, Selkirk claims that their Infinigrit resists wear 3 times longer than raw carbon fiber. So I've not been able to confirm Selkirk's claim on my paddles through playtesting because I've only logged 20 hours on my LUXX 2. But initial results do look promising. I tested spin when the paddle was new and tested it again after 20 hours of use, and my spin results were nearly identical. My original spin test came in at 2142 RPM, and my repeat spin test actually got slightly higher at 2160. Now, this is just within the margin of error, and I know the paddle didn't actually gain spin after it was used, but it also didn't lose any measurable amount of spin after 20 hours of use. Microscopic images of the Infinigrit on the LUXX 2 show a translucent texture overlying the surface graphics. At low power, shown here at 30 times magnification, you can see relatively sharp peaks. Compare these to the same magnification on the original LUXX, where you can see the grit looks more like small bubbles with rounded peaks. Shown at higher magnification, so here at 60 times, the original LUXX texture still has the appearance of rounded bubbles, kind of like you're looking very close up at the top of a carbonated beverage. Compare this to the LUXX 2 at 60 times, and you can see the peaks look like sort of angular pyramids with sharper points, kind of like small pieces of broken glass rather than rounded bubbles. So yeah, more time is needed to verify Selkirk's 3 times more durable claim, but so far, Infinigrit does look promising. In addition to all my usual testing protocol, I also tested the LUXX 2 with a ball cannon to measure what I'm calling its KewCOR, which is a reflection of the paddle's firepower and is analogous to USAP's PBCOR and UPAA's PEF, which are metrics used to sort of regulate the power of paddles. But before looking at the KewCOR results, let's go through all the usual suspects. So ball spin, power, pop, maneuverability, and sweet spot. The boxes at the top of this graphic give you the raw numbers, and the radar chart on the bottom shows where these numbers fall in terms of percentiles for over 300 paddles in my database. High values over on the left side of the chart indicate more firepower, and high values on the top right of the chart relate to the paddle's control and forgiveness. Lastly, the bottom of the chart tells you about maneuverability and hand speed. These are the results of the LUXX 2 Invicta, which is their elongated shape. I don't have data on the shorter, wider Epic shape, but you can assume that it will have slightly less firepower, but will also have a wider sweet spot and better hand speed and maneuverability. So looking at these metrics for the Invicta shape, you can see that its power is slightly below average for all the paddles in my database. But as we'll see in a minute, compared to the original LUXX, it's noticeably more powerful. Pop is very low, which is usually a good sign for a control paddle because dinks and resets are easier, and it's not as easy to pop up the ball. Spin is good, even though this radar chart shows it as being average. But it's important to note that most of the paddles in my database are performance paddles with very good spin. So the average of high spin is still high spin. Twist weight on this paddle is below average in its stock form, which translates into a more narrow sweet spot. This can be improved with perimeter weighting, which I'll talk about more later in the modifications section. Lastly, swing weight and balance point are both slightly above average, resulting in overall less hand speed and maneuverability. But I wouldn't call this paddle sluggish by any means, just slightly less maneuverable than average. And yes, like I mentioned, the Epic shape will have better maneuverability. Now let's talk about KewCOR. I've been working on this metric now for several months, and this is the first paddle review where I'll present it. Basically, it's a similar test to what's being used by USAP and UPAA to limit power in the game. It involves shooting a ball with a cannon at a clamped paddle and measuring the efficiency of this paddle-ball collision. If the paddle is too good at returning a ball's incoming speed, it behaves too much like a springy tennis racket and it fails power limits at USAP and UPAA. So I'm using this same method to rank paddles from low power to high power, and in this graphic, you can see the LUXX 2 returned a KewCOR of 0.463, placing it in the upper realm of the control paddle category. I also tested the original LUXX and it scored a 0.442, placing it in the lower end of the control paddle category. So these results do verify Selkirk's goal to give the LUXX 2 more offensive options, and it's something I also noticed when hitting with the LUXX 2, as I'll discuss in the next section. By the way, these KewCOR results and a whole bunch of other metrics that you can use yourself to create your own radar charts for hundreds of paddles. These are available at my website, so head on over to JohnKewPickleball.com or follow the link in the description to check that out. So if you've played with the original LUXX, then the LUXX 2 is going to feel familiar. It's basically a LUXX with a bit more power and better vibration damping. Similar to the original LUXX, it has a soft feel when the ball strikes the paddle face, which I think is accentuated in the LUXX 2 because of the foam beard that was added to the bottom of the paddle face. And the combination of good spin and muted pop provides really good control. I'd say that the LUXX 2 is just as easy to control as the original LUXX, even though the LUXX 2 is more powerful. The reason for this is that the LUXX 2 generates more power only with full swings like serves and drives, but with shorter strokes, the ball is easily controlled and doesn't spring off the face too much. And the extra power with full swings is a welcome addition, especially considering how much more powerful the paddle landscape has become since the introduction of the original LUXX 2 years ago. So the LUXX 2 isn't going to blow your opponents off the court or anything, but it feels more relevant by today's standards. So it gives you a wider range of options, still focused on finesse and control, but now also with a bit more offense. One thing to note here is that if you have a two-handed backhand, this paddle will rub your hand raw, especially if you put a finger on the back of the paddle. The Infinigrit coating also goes around the edges of the paddle, so I noticed the skin between my thumb and forefinger where it touches the edge of the paddle during two-ease was getting more and more raw. I never noticed this on the original LUXX, which also has grit on the edges, and I suspect the sharper, more angular grit revealed under the microscope causes Infinigrit to more easily abrade your skin. If you're using a second hand on the paddle, I do suggest covering the edges in this area with edge tape or extending your tungsten tape all the way to the grip. Like I mentioned earlier, I've only tested the Invicta shape, so if you're wondering how the Epic shape compares, it's safe to assume it'll have slightly less power than the Invicta, but a bigger sweet spot, so side to side, and better hand speed. You're also losing some handle length with the Epic, which is a consideration if you use a two-handed backhand. I think these paddles benefit from perimeter weighting, especially the Invicta shape, which has a low twist weight in its stock form, resulting in a sweet spot that feels a bit narrow. For an edgeless paddle, the sweet spot on the LUXX 2 feels pretty good, but it's definitely improved with perimeter weighting. I used 7.5 inches of 1/2 gram per inch tungsten tape, extending along most of the lateral edges of the paddle, going from near where the paddle curves up towards its tip down to below the curve of the neck. This brought the stock weight from 8.0 ounces up to 8.3 ounces, raised the swing weight from 118 to 121, and bumped the twist weight from 5.9 to 6.6. While this weight setup resulted in slightly reduced maneuverability, I do think the trade-off was well worth it in terms of better plow-through and a noticeably wider sweet spot. So overall, the LUXX 2 is an iterative improvement of the original LUXX that makes this paddle more relevant by today's standards. So the new tech in the LUXX 2 improves the overall feel of the paddle by reducing vibration. It gives it more offensive options, and it promises more durable grit so that you don't lose the ability to spin and shape the ball as quickly. Even with its boost in power, the LUXX 2 is still solidly a control paddle. And a control paddle priced at close to $300 is a bit of a tough pill to swallow. There are quite a few solid performing control paddles priced in the $100 to $150 range, like the 11624 Jelly Bean, Vatic Prism Flash, 6-0 Quartz, and Pickle Hurricane Pro, just to name a few. I mean, people are often willing to pay a good amount of money for the most powerful paddles on the market with the newest tech, but control paddles that cost 2 to 3 times more than paddles with similar performance is a big ask. So would I spend my own money on it if I was looking for a control paddle? Probably not. That being said, if the Infinigrit does live up to its claims and keeps its spin 3 times longer than the most durable paddles currently on the market, then that could justify the big price tag. As I mentioned earlier, I'm only 20 hours into testing Infinigrit's durability, and so far it does look promising, but I won't know for sure until further testing. I think this paddle best fits the profile of a player who is currently using the original LUXX and wants a bit more firepower and a better feeling paddle when hitting the ball and longer lasting spin. Or for a player who's looking for a control paddle with durable spin and who's sort of willing to gamble on Selkirk's claims of 3 times greater durability based on sort of preliminary evidence of the new Infinigrit texture. And if looks matter to you, this is a very good-looking paddle. The graphics haven't really changed that much, but the original LUXX has proven to stand the test of time in terms of aesthetics. So what has changed is the neck hole. While I'm not a huge fan of neck holes in general, I do think the new hole shape is much improved. If you imagine the hole as a mouth, the original LUXX has sort of this goofy looking smile, and the new LUXX by comparison has a more subdued grin. Still friendly, but more confident. The LUXX 2 costs $280, and you can use the code INF-JohnQ or purchase through my affiliate link in the description below to receive a $30 Selkirk gift card at no additional cost to you. I will say that Selkirk's customer service is second to none, and they offer a lifetime warranty on the LUXX 2 against workmanship and manufacturer defects. Okay, that's it for now. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.